fat daughter was given to a king vampire as punishment by her billionaire father, but he loved her like no other. I always knew my father hated me. I just never knew how much until the night he sold me to a monster. The rain was pouring outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of our Manhattan penthouse, the kind of rain that makes you feel like the whole world is crying. I was standing in the living room, still wearing my pajamas, an oversized t-shirt that hung past my knees and sweatpants that my stepmother always said made me look even bigger than you already are. I was 23 years old, and I had spent my entire life being reminded that I was a disappointment. Isabel. My father's voice cut through the silence like a knife. He was sitting in his leather armchair, swirling whiskey in a crystal glass, his silver hair perfectly combed, his designer suit immaculate even at midnight. Richard Ashford. Billionaire. Philanthropist. The man whose face graced the covers of Forbes and Time. The man who couldn't stand to look at his own daughter. Father. I kept my voice steady, even though my heart was racing. He never called me into the living room. He never spoke to me at all if he could help it. Is something wrong? He laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound. Wrong? No, Isabel. For once in your miserable existence, something is finally going right. I felt a chill run down my spine. My stepmother, Victoria, emerged from the shadows like a snake slithering out of its den. She was everything I wasn't, tall, blonde, willowy thin. She had married my father 3 years after my mother died, and she had made it her mission to remind me every single day that I didn't belong. Should I tell her, darling? Victoria's lips curled into a smile. Or would you like the honors? Tell me what? My voice cracked. I hated how weak I sounded. I hated how they could still make me feel like a scared little girl after all these years. My father set down his glass and stood up. He walked toward me slowly, deliberately, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble floor. He stopped just inches from my face, and I could smell the whiskey on his breath. I made a deal, he said. A very important deal. The kind of deal that will secure the future of Ashford Industries for generations to come. What kind of deal? I whispered. The kind that requires a sacrifice. His eyes traveled over my body with disgust, the curves I had inherited from my mother, the softness that no amount of dieting had ever been able to eliminate. And you, my dear daughter, are that sacrifice. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? There are things in this world that you don't understand, my father continued. Powers beyond your comprehension. Creatures that have walked this earth for centuries, accumulating wealth and influence that makes my fortune look like pocket change. You're not making any sense. Vampires. He shouted the word, and I flinched. They're real, Isabel. They've always been real. And they rule the world from the shadows. I stared at him. For a moment, I wondered if he had finally lost his mind. Vampires? This had to be some kind of sick joke. But then I saw the fear in his eyes. Real, genuine fear. My father had never been afraid of anything in his life. There is a king among them, he continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. The oldest. The most powerful. His name is Alexander Volkov, and he has demanded a bride. A bride? I repeated numbly. A human bride. A sacrifice from one of the great families. And I volunteered you. The room started spinning. I reached out to grab something, anything, to steady myself, but there was nothing. I stumbled backward until my back hit the cold window. You can't be serious, I gasped. This is insane. Vampires aren't real. This is some kind of... It's real. Victoria stepped forward, her heels clicking. And you should be grateful. For once in your life, you're actually useful. Your father's business was failing. We were going to lose everything. But Lord Volkov offered us a deal. Unlimited wealth. Unlimited power. All he wanted in exchange was a bride from a prominent family. So you're giving him me? Tears were streaming down my face now. I couldn't stop them. Why me? Why not? Why not what? My father's lip curled. Why not someone beautiful? Someone worthy. He shook his head. That's exactly why you're perfect, Isabel. You're nothing. You've always been nothing. A fat, useless reminder of a wife I never loved. At least now you can serve a purpose. The words hit me like physical blows. I had heard him say cruel things before, but never like this. Never so direct. Never so final. Mom loved you, I whispered. She loved you so much. Your mother was a fool. He turned away from me. Just like you. Now go pack your things. Lord Volkov's men will be here within the hour. No. I shook my head violently. No, I won't go. You can't make me. Actually, I can. My father pulled out a document from his jacket pocket. You see, when you signed those papers last week, the ones I told you were for your trust fund, you actually signed a binding contract. Legal and supernatural. You belong to Lord Volkov now. There's nothing you can do about it. I remembered those papers. I had signed them without reading them, just like I always did when my father asked. I had been so desperate for any scrap of his approval that I would have signed anything. And now I had signed away my life. You tricked me, I breathed. Your own daughter. You were never my daughter. His words were like ice. Not really. Now get out of my sight. The car that came for me was black, sleek, and expensive. 2 men in dark suits stepped out, pale, beautiful men with eyes that seemed to glow in the darkness. They didn't speak as they took my single suitcase and opened the back door. I had thought about running. I had thought about screaming for help. But where would I go? The contract was binding. My father had made sure of that. And some part of me, the part that had been beaten down and broken over 23 years, whispered that maybe this was exactly what I deserved. Maybe I really was worthless. Maybe I really was nothing. I climbed into the car without a word, and we drove off into the night. We drove for hours. At some point, I must have fallen asleep, because when I opened my eyes, we were no longer in the city. We were on a winding road through a dense forest, the kind of forest that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale, or a nightmare. And then I saw it. The castle rose up from the mist like something out of a Gothic novel. It was massive, ancient, with towers that pierced the clouds and walls of black stone that seemed to absorb the moonlight. Gargoyles perched on every ledge, their stone eyes watching as our car approached. This was real. This was actually happening. The car stopped in front of a massive wooden door, and one of the pale men opened my door. "Welcome to Volkov Castle, Miss Ashford," he said. His voice was smooth, cultured. "Lord Volkov is expecting you." My legs were shaking as I stepped out of the car. The air was cold and damp, and I could see my breath forming clouds in front of my face. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly very aware of how thin my clothes were. The doors opened on their own, and I found myself walking into a grand entrance hall. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. Tapestries depicting ancient battles lined the walls. A grand staircase curved upward into darkness. And at the top of that staircase stood a man. No. Not a man. A creature. A vampire. He descended slowly, each step deliberate, graceful. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a powerful build that his tailored black suit couldn't hide. His hair was dark, almost black, swept back from a face that was simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. High cheekbones. A strong jaw. Lips that looked like they had been carved by a sculptor. But it was his eyes that made me freeze. They were pale grey, almost silver, and they glowed with an inner light that no human eyes could possess. Ancient eyes. Hungry eyes. Eyes that saw straight through me. "Isabel Ashford," he said, and his voice was like velvet wrapped around steel. It had a slight accent, Russian, maybe, that made every syllable sound like music. At last. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But I was rooted to the spot, unable to move, unable to speak. He reached the bottom of the stairs and walked toward me. With each step he took, I could feel the power radiating off him. This was a creature who had lived for centuries. A creature who had killed countless people. A creature who now owned me. He stopped just inches away, so close that I could smell him, pine and snow and something darker, something ancient. He was looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. They told me you were plain, he murmured, almost to himself. They told me you were undesirable. I felt my cheeks flush with shame. Of course. Even a monster was disappointed by what he had received. I'm sorry, I whispered, not knowing what else to say. I'm sorry I'm not what you expected. They were wrong. I blinked. What? He reached out and touched my face. His fingers were cool against my skin, but not cold. Not the icy touch of death that I had expected. His thumb traced along my cheekbone, and I shivered. They told me you were plain, he repeated. But they were blind. You are magnificent. I was sure I had misheard him. I don't understand. Your curves. His eyes traveled over my body, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel disgusted by someone's gaze. Your softness. The warmth that radiates from you like sunlight. He leaned closer, and I could feel his breath against my ear. You are everything I have been searching for, Isabel. Everything. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. You're lying, I said. You have to be lying. No one has ever. I'm not beautiful. I've never been beautiful. He pulled back and looked at me with those ancient silver eyes. Who told you that? Everyone. My voice broke. My father. My stepmother. Every boy who ever looked at me and laughed. Every magazine cover. Every mirror. Then they were all fools. His voice was firm, absolute. And I will spend the rest of eternity proving them wrong. I was given a room that was bigger than the entire apartment I had lived in during college. A massive four-poster bed dominated the center, draped in silk curtains the color of blood. A fireplace crackled warmly on one wall. French doors opened onto a balcony that overlooked the misty forest below. A woman came to help me bathe and dress, a vampire, I realized, though she was kind in a way I hadn't expected. Her name was Elena, and she had been turned centuries ago. She told me that Lord Volkov, Alexander, was the oldest vampire in existence. Over 2,000 years old. He had built empires and watched them crumble. He had loved and lost more than any being should have to. He has been searching for his true mate for centuries, Elena told me as she brushed my hair. We all thought he had given up. But then he saw your photograph, and everything changed. My photograph? I frowned. How did he even? Your father approached him, Elena explained. Offered you as a potential bride in exchange for business support. Lord Volkov receives such offers frequently. He always refuses. But when he saw your face... She smiled. He said he knew. He said you were the one. I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. How could a creature who had lived for 2,000 years, who could have anyone he wanted, possibly be interested in me? But when I emerged from my room and saw Alexander waiting for me in the hallway, when I saw the way his eyes lit up at the sight of me, something shifted in my chest. Something I had never felt before. Hope. Dinner was served in a grand dining hall, but I was the only one eating. Alexander sat across from me, watching me with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. Are you not hungry? I asked, then immediately felt stupid. I mean, do vampires eat? Or do you only drink blood? He smiled, revealing the tips of his fangs. They were sharp, deadly, but somehow not frightening. I fed earlier. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable. You're being very considerate. I pushed a piece of chicken around my plate. I have to admit, this isn't what I expected. What did you expect? I looked up at him. Terror. Pain. Death. My father told me I was being given to a monster. A shadow passed over Alexander's face. Your father, he repeated. Tell me about him. So I did. The words spilled out of me like water from a broken dam, everything I had kept bottled up for 23 years. My mother's death when I was 7. My father's coldness afterward. Victoria's cruelty. The endless diets, the constant criticism, the feeling that no matter what I did, I would never be good enough. Alexander listened without interrupting. His expression grew darker with every word, his eyes glowing brighter, and I could feel the rage building in him like a storm. He called you worthless. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it held more danger than a shout. Among other things. And he gave you to me as a punishment? Because he thought I would hurt you. I nodded, unable to speak. Alexander stood up so fast that his chair flew backward. He paced across the room, his movements predatory, his fists clenched. He is wrong, he growled. He is wrong about everything. You are not worthless, Isabel. You are priceless. And I will never, never hurt you. Do you understand? I stood up too, my heart racing. Why? I demanded. Why do you care? You just met me. I'm nothing to you. In a blur of motion, he was in front of me. His hands cupped my face, forcing me to look into his eyes. You are everything to me, he said. From the moment I saw your photograph, I knew. I have lived for over 2,000 years, Isabel. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have loved and lost more times than I can count. But I have never, not once, felt what I feel when I look at you. What do you feel? I whispered. Complete. And then he kissed me. It was soft at first, gentle, like he was afraid I might break. But when I leaned into him, when my hands gripped the lapels of his jacket, something unleashed between us. The kiss deepened, became hungry, desperate. His arms wrapped around my waist and pulled me against him, and I could feel every inch of his powerful body pressed against mine. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel ashamed of my curves. I felt wanted. I felt beautiful. I felt alive. The days that followed were like something out of a dream. Alexander showed me his world, a world I had never known existed. He took me to the library, which contained books that were older than most civilizations. He showed me the gardens, where flowers bloomed despite the eternal mist, their petals glowing with supernatural light. He introduced me to the other vampires who lived in the castle, and they welcomed me with warmth and respect. He gave me gifts, dresses made of silk and velvet, jewelry that sparkled with diamonds and rubies, shoes that made me feel like a princess. But he also gave me something far more valuable, his time. His attention. His presence. We talked for hours every night, sitting by the fire in the library or walking through the moonlit gardens. He told me about his life, about the ancient civilization he had been born into, about the vampire who had turned him, about the centuries of wandering and searching for meaning. I was a prince, he told me one night. Before I was turned. My father was a powerful king, and I was his heir. But I was unhappy. I felt like there was something missing, something I could never quite find. What was missing? I asked. He looked at me with those silver eyes. You. I blushed. I still couldn't quite believe that any of this was real. That's impossible. I wasn't even born yet. Not you specifically, he amended. But the idea of you. The dream of someone who would understand me completely. Someone who would see past the monster and find the man underneath. I don't think you're a monster, I said softly. He smiled, but there was sadness in it. You don't know everything about me, Isabel. You don't know the things I've done. Then tell me. So he did. He told me about the wars he had fought, the enemies he had killed, the blood he had spilled. He told me about the dark periods when he had lost himself to the hunger, when he had been truly monstrous. He told me everything, holding nothing back. And when he was done, I reached out and took his hand. We all have darkness in us, I said. The difference is what we do with it. You could have been a tyrant. You could have used your power to destroy and conquer. But instead, you built a sanctuary. You protect the vampires under your rule. You search for connection, not conquest. You make me sound noble. You are noble. I squeezed his hand. You're the most noble person I've ever met. He pulled me into his arms then, holding me like I was something precious, something fragile. How is it possible, he murmured against my hair, that a creature as young as you could be so wise? Maybe being young has nothing to do with wisdom, I replied. Maybe wisdom comes from suffering. And I've done plenty of that. He pulled back to look at my face, and his expression was fierce. You will never suffer again, he vowed. Not as long as I exist. I swear it on my immortal soul. And I believed him. 1 month passed. Then 2. Then 3. I had stopped counting the days. Time moved differently in the castle, slower, softer, like honey dripping from a spoon. I spent my mornings exploring the vast grounds, my afternoons reading in the library, and my evenings with Alexander. We had grown closer than I ever thought possible. He knew everything about me now, my fears, my dreams, my secret hopes and hidden shame. And I knew everything about him. We were 2 broken people who had somehow found wholeness in each other. But there was still one thing we hadn't done. One line we hadn't crossed. Every night, when Alexander walked me to my room, he would kiss me at the door. Sometimes gently, sometimes with a passion that left me breathless. But he always pulled back. He always said good night and walked away, leaving me aching for more. Why won't you stay? I asked him one night, frustrated beyond reason. I know you want to. I can see it in your eyes. So why do you keep leaving? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he took my hand and led me to the balcony, where the moon hung full and bright over the forest. There is something I haven't told you, he said. Something about vampire mates. What is it? He turned to face me. When a vampire finds their true mate, their destined partner, there is a bond that forms. It's more than just love. It's a connection of souls. Once it's complete, it can never be broken. That sounds intense. It is. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my face. The bond is formed through blood. If I were to drink from you, and you were to drink from me, we would be connected forever. You would gain some of my strength, my longevity. And I would be able to feel your emotions, your thoughts. We would be one. My heart was pounding. Is that what you want? More than anything I have ever wanted in 2,000 years. His voice was raw with longing. But I won't force you, Isabel. I won't pressure you. If you want to leave, if you want to return to your old life, I will let you go. The contract your father signed means nothing to me. Your freedom matters more than my happiness. Tears were streaming down my face now. No one had ever given me a choice before. No one had ever put my needs above their own. I don't want to leave, I whispered. I want to stay. I want to be with you. Even knowing what it means? Even knowing that you would be bound to a monster for eternity. You're not a monster. I stepped closer to him, close enough to feel the cool aura of his power. You're the only person who has ever made me feel beautiful. The only person who has ever made me feel wanted. The only person who has ever made me feel like I matter. You matter, he said fiercely. You matter more than anything in this world. Then show me. I tilted my head back, exposing my neck to him. Make me yours. His eyes flared with silver light, and I saw his fangs extend fully for the first time. He was beautiful and terrible and mine. Are you sure? He asked one final time. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He kissed me then, a deep, searing kiss that set my entire body on fire. And then his lips moved down to my throat, and I felt the sharp sting of his fangs breaking skin, and then there was only pleasure. Wave after wave of it, rolling through me like ocean tides. I could feel him drinking from me, could feel the connection forming between us like a golden thread weaving through my soul. It was the most intimate thing I had ever experienced. More intimate than any physical act could ever be. And then he pulled back and bit his own wrist, holding it to my lips. Drink, he commanded, and I obeyed. His blood was like liquid fire, like starlight, like every beautiful thing I had ever imagined. It flowed through me and changed me, awakening parts of myself I hadn't known existed. I felt stronger. More alive. More powerful. When it was over, we stood there in the moonlight, foreheads pressed together, breathing heavily. My mate, Alexander whispered. My beautiful, perfect mate. And for the first time in my life, I believed it. The change didn't happen overnight. It was subtle at first, more energy, sharper senses, a glow to my skin that hadn't been there before. But as the weeks passed, the transformation became more pronounced. I was still me. Still curvy, still soft in all the places I had been taught to hate. But now those curves seemed to radiate with inner light. My hair grew thicker and more lustrous. My eyes seemed to sparkle with an intensity they had never possessed before. And I was strong. So incredibly strong. I could lift things that would have been impossible before. I could run faster than I ever had. I could hear conversations from rooms away, smell emotions on people like perfume. "You're becoming like us," Elena told me one afternoon as we walked through the gardens. "Not fully vampire, the bond doesn't work that way. But you share some of Lord Volkov's power now. You'll age slowly, heal quickly. You might even live as long as he does. Forever." The thought was dizzying. If fate allows. Elena smiled. "Lord Volkov has waited 2,000 years for you. I think fate owes you both at least that much." But fate, as I was about to learn, had other plans. It was a rainy evening when the messenger arrived, a human, pale and trembling, bearing a letter sealed with a crest I recognized immediately. My father's crest. Alexander brought me the letter with dark eyes. "You don't have to read it," he said. "Whatever Richard Ashford wants, he can go to hell." But I needed to know. I needed to understand. I broke the seal and read. "Isabel, I know you must hate me. You have every right. What I did to you was unforgivable. But I need your help. Victoria has betrayed me. She's been working with a group of vampire hunters, fanatics who want to destroy all supernatural creatures. She used me to get to Lord Volkov. The plan was never about business. It was about getting someone inside the castle. Someone who could invite the hunters in. The hunters are coming, Isabel. They're coming for Lord Volkov, and they're coming for you. And Victoria is leading them. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. But please, please warn Lord Volkov. Whatever you think of me, don't let them destroy you too. Your father." My hands were shaking as I handed the letter to Alexander. He read it in seconds, and when he looked up, his eyes were blazing with fury. "Hunters," he growled. I should have known. Victoria was always asking too many questions. Victoria was here. I interrupted. "Once. Shortly after you arrived. She came under the pretense of checking on you, but I turned her away at the gate." His jaw tightened. "She must have been scouting. Looking for weaknesses. What do we do?" "We prepare." He took my hand and began leading me through the castle. "The hunters are dangerous, but they're not invincible. We have centuries of experience and power on our side. We will not fall." But even as he said the words, I could feel his fear through our bond. This was serious. More serious than anything he had faced in a very long time. They came at midnight. There were dozens of them, humans armed with weapons specifically designed to kill vampires. Wooden stakes dipped in holy water. Crossbows loaded with silver bolts. Grenades filled with liquid sunlight, a substance that could incinerate a vampire in seconds. And at their head was Victoria, dressed in black tactical gear, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. She looked like a warrior. She looked like death. I watched from the castle ramparts as they approached, my heart pounding in my chest. Alexander stood beside me, his hand in mine. "Stay inside," he commanded. "No matter what happens, stay inside the castle walls. The wards will protect you." "I won't hide while you fight," I protested. "I'm part of this now. I'm your mate. Which is exactly why I need you safe." He cupped my face in his hands. "You are my strength, Isabel. My reason for existing. If something happens to you, I will burn this entire world to ashes. Nothing is going to happen to me." I kissed him fiercely. "Now go. Show them what it means to threaten the Vampire King." He smiled, that dangerous, beautiful smile that made my heart skip. "As you command, my love." And then he was gone, moving faster than my eyes could follow, leading the charge against the hunters. What followed was chaos. Screams and explosions and the clash of supernatural power against human technology. I watched from the window as Alexander tore through the hunters like a force of nature, his movements so fast they were barely visible. Other vampires joined the fight, emerging from the castle to defend their home. But the hunters were prepared. They had clearly studied vampire weaknesses extensively. Silver nets flew through the air, trapping vampires who couldn't free themselves fast enough. Holy water grenades exploded, leaving burns and screams in their wake. And Victoria moved through the battlefield with cold precision, putting down vampires with stakes through the heart. She was heading for Alexander. I knew it before she got there. Through our bond, I could feel Alexander's focus, his determination. He was so intent on protecting the castle that he didn't see Victoria approaching from behind, didn't see the stake she was raising. I didn't think. I just moved. I burst out of the castle doors and ran faster than I had ever run in my life. The power of Alexander's blood surged through me, pushing me beyond human limits. I crossed the battlefield in seconds, my only thought to save him, to protect my mate. I threw myself in front of Victoria just as she brought the stake down. The pain was indescribable. The wooden point pierced my shoulder, missing my heart by inches. I screamed, a sound that cut through the chaos of battle like a blade. Everything stopped. Alexander turned. When he saw me, when he saw the stake protruding from my body, something in him broke. I felt it through our bond, a tidal wave of rage and terror and love so intense it nearly drowned me. And then he unleashed his true power. I had seen Alexander fight before. I had watched him move with speed and grace. But I had never seen this. This was something else entirely. This was the full fury of a 2,000-year-old vampire king. He became darkness itself. Shadows erupted from his body, forming tendrils that lashed out at the hunters. His eyes blazed with silver fire. His voice, when he spoke, was like thunder. "You dare touch my mate!" The hunters screamed. One by one, they fell, not dead, but paralyzed, trapped in cocoons of living shadow. Within minutes, it was over. Every single hunter was incapacitated. Every hunter except Victoria. She stood frozen, the bloody stake still in her hand, her face white with terror. Alexander stalked toward her, and she dropped the weapon and fell to her knees. "Please," she begged. "Please, I was just..." "You were just what?" Alexander's voice was deadly calm. "Just trying to kill us? Just trying to destroy everything we've built. The vampires are monsters. They need to be destroyed." "Monsters?" Alexander grabbed her by the throat and lifted her off the ground. "You want to talk about monsters? Your stepdaughter came to me broken. Shattered. Convinced she was worthless because you and her father spent 23 years tearing her apart. You didn't care about saving humanity. You just wanted to hurt her one more time." Victoria was choking, her face turning purple. But Alexander showed no mercy. "Alexander." My voice was weak, but I knew he could hear me. "Stop." He turned to look at me, and I saw the conflict in his eyes. The rage battling against the love. "She deserves death," he growled. "Maybe. But I don't want you to kill her." I staggered toward him, clutching my wounded shoulder. "I don't want her to have that power over you. Over us." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Alexander lowered Victoria to the ground. "You will live," he told her. "But you will remember this night for the rest of your miserable existence. You came here to destroy us, and instead, you've proven how powerful we truly are." He turned away from her, dismissing her like she was nothing. And then he was at my side, his arms around me, his power flowing into my wound and beginning to heal it. "You foolish, brave, wonderful woman," he murmured against my hair. "You could have been killed. I couldn't let her hurt you." I leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. "I love you, Alexander. I'd die for you. Don't ever say that." His voice was fierce. "We are going to live, Isabel. We are going to live forever, together. No one will ever separate us." I swear it. We kept Victoria as a prisoner while we dealt with the other hunters. Alexander's vampires rounded them up efficiently, and within hours, they were all contained in the castle's dungeons. But there was still one loose end to deal with. My father. His letter had warned us about the attack, but I wasn't sure whether to believe it was genuine. Had he really had a change of heart? Or was this just another manipulation? I had to find out. I need to see him, I told Alexander the next evening. My wound had healed completely, another benefit of being bonded to a vampire, and I felt stronger than ever. I need to look him in the eye and know the truth. Then we go together. Alexander's tone left no room for argument. I will not let you face that man alone. We flew to New York, literally flew, Alexander carrying me through the night sky with his supernatural speed. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The penthouse looked exactly as I remembered it, but it felt different now. Smaller, somehow. Less intimidating. I realized that this place had only ever had power over me because I had given it power. And I wasn't that scared little girl anymore. My father was waiting in the living room. He looked terrible, gaunt, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, his face crumpled. Isabel. His voice cracked. You came. I came. I kept my voice steady. Now explain yourself. So he did. He told us everything, how Victoria had targeted him years ago, how she had manipulated him into marrying her, how she had slowly turned him against me. He told us about the vampire hunters, about the deal Victoria had made with them. He told us how he had only realized the truth when it was almost too late. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, he said. I've been a terrible father. The worst father imaginable. When your mother died, I was so lost in my own grief that I couldn't see yours. And then Victoria came along, and she made it so easy to blame you for everything. She didn't make you do anything. My voice was hard. You chose to believe her. You chose to treat me like garbage. That's on you. You're right. Tears were streaming down his face now. You're right, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Isabel. I know that words aren't enough. I know that nothing will ever be enough. But I wanted you to know, or I wanted you to understand. Understand what? He looked up at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something real in his eyes. Something human. I loved your mother, he whispered. I loved her more than anything in the world. And when she died, I couldn't handle it. You looked so much like her, same eyes, same smile, same beautiful curves, and every time I saw you, I was reminded of what I had lost. He shook his head. It was easier to push you away than to face that pain. It was easier to hate you than to let myself love you. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. All those years of cruelty, of criticism, of being made to feel worthless, it hadn't been about me at all. It had been about him. About his inability to process his own grief. That's not an excuse, I said finally. What you did was wrong. You damaged me in ways I'm still recovering from. I know. But I forgive you. His head snapped up. What? I forgive you. I felt Alexander's hand on the small of my back, supporting me. Not because you deserve it. Not because what you did was okay. But because carrying around hatred for you is exhausting, and I'm done being exhausted. I'm done letting you have power over me. My father was sobbing now, ugly, broken sounds that filled the room. Thank you, he gasped. Thank you, Isabel. I don't deserve. You're right. You don't. I turned away from him. But I do. I deserve to be free. We returned to the castle that night, and I felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. Free from my father's cruelty, free from Victoria's manipulation, free from the voice in my head that had always told me I wasn't good enough. But there was still one more truth to uncover. Victoria was being held in the dungeons, and I wanted to speak with her. I wanted to understand why she had done what she did. Alexander didn't like the idea, but he agreed to let me go, with him standing guard outside the cell door. Victoria looked terrible. Her perfect hair was tangled, her designer clothes were ruined, and her flawless makeup had long since smeared into nothing. She looked up when I entered, and her eyes were filled with hatred. "Come to gloat," she spat. "No." I stood across from her, arms crossed. "I came to understand." "Why? Why did you do all of this?" For a moment, I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, slowly, a bitter smile crossed her face. "You want to know why? Fine. I'll tell you." She leaned back against the wall. "My family has been hunting vampires for generations. It's our sacred duty. When I was 15, a vampire killed my parents right in front of me. I swore that day that I would dedicate my life to destroying every single one of them. So you married my father to get to Alexander. Your father was a means to an end. He had money, influence, and most importantly, access to the supernatural world. I knew that eventually, I could use him to get close to the Vampire King." She laughed bitterly. "When he offered you as a sacrifice, I couldn't believe my luck. Finally, I had a way inside. All I had to do was wait. But I wasn't part of your plan," I said slowly. "You expected Alexander to hurt me. To kill me, maybe. That's why you encouraged my father to give me to him. I expected him to do what vampires do." Victoria's voice was venomous. "Instead, he fell in love with you. Disgusting. A creature that old, that powerful, falling for a fat, pathetic nothing." "I'm not nothing." My voice was calm, steady. "I used to believe I was. You and my father made sure of that. But I'm not. I'm strong. I'm worthy. I'm loved. Loved by a monster. Loved by someone who sees me clearly." I stepped closer to the bars. "You know what the difference is between you and me, Victoria? I found someone who accepted me exactly as I am. You've spent your whole life consumed by hatred, and it's destroyed you." Victoria lunged at the bars, but she couldn't reach me. "You don't know anything," she screamed. "You're just a naive little girl who's been seduced by a demon. I'm a woman who found her soulmate." I turned away from her. "And you're going to spend the rest of your life in this cell, thinking about everything you've lost." I walked away without looking back. A week later, Alexander came to me with a question. We were in the library, curled up together on a velvet sofa in front of the fireplace. Outside, snow was falling softly, blanketing the castle grounds in white. "Isabel," he said, his voice serious. "There's something I need to ask you." I sat up, immediately alert. "What is it?" "The bond between us is strong," he began. "Stronger than any bond I've ever experienced. But it's not complete." "What do you mean?" He took my hands in his. "You have some of my power, but you're still human. You'll live longer than most, but eventually, time will catch up with you. And the thought of losing you," or his voice broke. "I cannot bear it." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I want to turn you." His silver eyes were intense. "I want to make you fully vampire. I want to spend eternity with you, Isabel. Not just centuries. Eternity." My heart was pounding. I had known this moment would come eventually. I had thought about it, dreamed about it. But now that it was here, what would it be like? I asked. "Being turned." "It's painful," he admitted. "The transformation takes 3 days. You would die, your human body would die, and then you would rise again as something new. Something immortal." "Would I still be me?" "Yes." He squeezed my hands. "Vampires don't lose their humanity when they're turned. They're still themselves, just enhanced. Stronger. Faster. More connected to the supernatural world. And we would be together forever. Forever." The word was a promise, a vow, a prayer. I thought about my old life, the pain, the loneliness, the constant feeling of not being enough. And I thought about my new life, the love, the acceptance, the joy of being truly seen. There was no contest. "Yes," I said. "Turn me." The transformation was everything Alexander had warned me about and more. He took me to a special chamber deep in the castle, a room that had been used for turnings for centuries. The walls were covered in ancient symbols, designed to contain and channel supernatural energy. "I'll be with you the whole time," he promised. "I won't leave your side for a second." I lay down on the stone altar in the center of the room, my heart racing. I was terrified, but I was also ready. More ready than I had ever been for anything. Alexander leaned over me, his silver eyes glowing. "I love you, Isabel Ashford," he whispered. "I have loved you since the moment I saw your photograph. I will love you until the stars burn out and the universe goes dark." "I love you too," I whispered back. "Now and forever." He kissed me, a deep, passionate kiss that made me forget my fear. And then his lips moved to my throat, and I felt the sharp sting of his fangs, and then there was only darkness. I died on a Tuesday. I came back on a Friday. Those 3 days were the longest of my existence. I was trapped in a void, a space between life and death where time had no meaning. I was aware of nothing except pain, wave after wave of it, tearing through my body, reshaping me from the inside out. But through it all, I could feel Alexander. His presence was a constant warmth at the edge of my consciousness, anchoring me to reality. He was there, holding my hand, whispering words of love and encouragement. When I finally opened my eyes, the world was different. Colors were brighter. Sounds were sharper. I could hear the heartbeat of a mouse in the walls. I could smell the snow falling outside. I could feel the pulse of supernatural energy that flowed through the castle like blood through veins. And I could feel Alexander. Not just through our bond, but completely. His emotions, his thoughts, his essence, they were as clear to me as my own. We were connected in a way that transcended words. "Isabel." He was kneeling beside the altar, his face filled with wonder. "You're awake." "I'm more than awake." I sat up, testing my new body. I felt strong, so incredibly strong. And hungry. "I'm alive." He laughed, a joyful, exhilarant sound, and pulled me into his arms. "Welcome to eternity, my love." 3 months after my transformation, I received a message. It was from my father. He was dying. Cancer. Terminal. The doctors had given him weeks. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was sad, despite everything, he was still my father. But another part of me felt numb. He had caused me so much pain. Did he really deserve my grief? Alexander sensed my turmoil through our bond. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want to see him." I wasn't sure why. Closure, maybe. Or maybe I just needed to know that chapter of my life was truly over. One last time. So we went. The hospital room was small and sterile. My father lay in the bed, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed. He looked like a skeleton, thin, frail, nothing like the powerful businessman who had once terrorized my childhood. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Isabel? Is that really you?" I knew I looked different. The transformation had made subtle changes to my appearance. My skin was paler, more luminous, my eyes had a faint glow, my curves seemed to radiate supernatural beauty. I was still me, but I was also more. "It's me, Father." You're one of them now." There was fear in his voice. "A vampire?" "Yes." I sat down beside his bed. Alexander turned me. "We're bonded for eternity." He closed his eyes. "I never wanted this for you. I never wanted any of this." "What did you want, Father?" I asked. The question wasn't accusatory. I genuinely wanted to know. I wanted. He trailed off, then sighed. "I don't know anymore. I wanted to stop hurting. I wanted to forget your mother. I wanted to be powerful enough that nothing could ever hurt me again." He laughed bitterly. "Look how well that worked out." "Grief makes us do terrible things," I said. "I understand that now. It doesn't excuse what you did, but I understand it." He reached out and took my hand. His skin was paper-thin, fragile. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, Isabel. For everything." I know. And for the first time, I truly believed him. I forgave you a long time ago, Father. But I couldn't forget. I couldn't pretend it didn't happen. I'm not asking you to. Tears were streaming down his face. I'm just asking you to be happy. To live your life, your eternal life, without carrying the weight of what I did. Can you do that? I thought about it. I thought about all the years of pain, all the scars that still lingered on my soul. And then I thought about Alexander, about our love, about the future stretching out before us like an endless road. Yes, I said finally. I can do that. He died 3 days later. I was there, holding his hand, when he took his last breath. 1 year after my transformation, Alexander asked me to marry him. We were in the garden, surrounded by the supernatural flowers that bloomed eternal. The moon was full and bright, casting silver light across the grounds. He knelt before me with a ring, an ancient thing, gold and rubies, that had been passed down through vampire royalty for millennia. Isabel Ashford, he said, his voice thick with emotion, you came into my life as a sacrifice, a punishment. But you became my salvation. My redemption. My reason for existing. I was crying, blood tears, as vampires do, but I didn't care. I have waited 2,000 years for you, he continued. I would wait 2,000 more. But I don't want to wait anymore. I want you to be my wife. My queen. My eternal partner. Yes. The word came out before he even finished. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. We were made for each other. The wedding was held in the castle, with every vampire under Alexander's rule in attendance. I wore a dress of blood-red silk, with a train that seemed to go on forever. My hair was piled high on my head, threaded through with rubies and gold. I had never felt more beautiful. The ceremony was ancient, conducted in a language I didn't fully understand. But the meaning was clear. We were pledging ourselves to each other, not just for a lifetime, but for eternity. For as long as the universe existed. When Alexander kissed me at the end of the ceremony, I felt our bond surge with power. We were one now, completely and totally. Nothing would ever separate us again. But there was one more surprise waiting for us. On our wedding night, Elena came to us with news. My lord, my lady, she said, her face pale. There's something you need to see. She led us to the castle's ancient library, to a section that had been sealed for centuries. Inside was a book, an old, dusty tome with pages that seemed to glow with supernatural light. This is the Book of Prophecy, Elena explained. It contains predictions made by the first vampires, thousands of years ago. We sealed it away because the prophecies were too disturbing, too impossible to believe. What does this have to do with us? Alexander asked. Elena opened the book to a specific page. Read for yourself. The text was in an ancient language, but I found that I could understand it perfectly, another benefit of the transformation. And as I read, my heart began to race. In the darkest age, when hope seems lost, a king of shadows will find his light. She will come from pain and sorrow, cast out by those who should have loved her. But she will rise, stronger than before, and together with the king, she will usher in a new era. An era of peace between humans and vampires. An era of unity. An era of love. This prophecy was made over 3,000 years ago, Elena said quietly. We always assumed it was metaphorical. But now it's clear, Alexander finished. He turned to look at me, his eyes filled with wonder. You're the one, Isabel. You've always been the one. I stared at the prophecy, my mind reeling. Me? The subject of an ancient vampire prophecy? It seemed impossible. And yet, here I was. Standing in a castle, married to a vampire king, changed from a broken human into something powerful and eternal. My whole life had been leading to this moment. What does it mean? I asked. An era of peace between humans and vampires. I don't know yet, Alexander admitted. But we'll figure it out together. Like we always do. He took my hand, and I felt the warmth of our bond flowing between us. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them as one. 5 years passed. In that time, we worked tirelessly to fulfill the prophecy. Alexander began reaching out to human governments, opening secret channels of communication. I used my unique perspective, having been human so recently, to help bridge the gap between our worlds. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, failures, moments when we wanted to give up. But we didn't. We couldn't. The prophecy had given us a purpose, and we were determined to see it through. Slowly, things began to change. Vampire and human communities started to interact. Fear began to give way to curiosity, then understanding, then acceptance. It wasn't perfect, there were still conflicts, still hatred, but the progress was undeniable. And through it all, our love only grew stronger. I'm writing this now, sitting in the library of our castle, watching the sun set through the specially treated windows. Yes, we can be in sunlight now, a benefit of the new peace treaties that allowed for technological cooperation. Alexander is beside me, as he always is. Even after all these years, my heart still skips when I look at him. He's reading a report from one of our human allies, his brow furrowed in concentration. I think about the girl I used to be, the girl who believed she was worthless, who thought she would never be loved. That girl seems like a stranger now. A distant memory of someone I used to know. My father gave me to a vampire king as a punishment. He thought he was condemning me to a fate worse than death. Instead, he gave me the greatest gift imaginable. He gave me love. Real, unconditional, eternal love. The kind of love I had always dreamed of but never believed I deserved. I know now that I was wrong. I do deserve love. Everyone does. It doesn't matter what you look like, what size you are, what anyone else thinks of you. You deserve to be loved completely, exactly as you are. And if a 2,000-year-old vampire king can see beauty in a girl the world called ugly, then maybe, just maybe, the world is wrong about a lot of things. Maybe it's time we all started seeing each other clearly. The end. But our story isn't really over. It's just beginning. If you're reading this and you've ever felt like you weren't enough, like you didn't deserve love, like you were somehow broken or worthless, I want you to know something. You are beautiful. You are worthy. You are enough. And somewhere out there, your Alexander is waiting for you. They might not be a vampire king. They might not live in a castle. But they will love you completely, unconditionally, exactly as you are. Don't give up. Your happily ever after is coming. I promise.